Hey YouTube, welcome back to Plett Projects. This is going to be an update on some of the yard projects. We have the putting green going in behind us. I want to take a look at the sports field, the soccer field. We leveled that and did some overseeding. I don't believe any of the seed has germinated yet, but it's looking green. We have a gorgeous day today. It's been in the 40s and 50s, but today it jumped up to 85. That's Fahrenheit. I also want to look at the front yard. I did scalp it and top dress it with sand and filled in some of the real low spots with the sand and soil mixture. And I did overseed that with the same seed mix as the athletic field, so I want to take a look. And like I said, I don't think any of it has germinated quite yet. I've been watering it multiple times a day, just light watering to try to keep the seeds moist. But it is jumping up in temperature recently, so I'm hopeful that in the next couple of days some of it's going to start to germinate. It is a mix between Kentucky bluegrass and perennial ryegrass. That's most of it. There is a little bit of other grass in there, and I'll get details of the exact mix that I used. But it's, according to the Reinder's website, it's the Premium 60 mix, and it's designed specifically to be able to keep at 5/8 of an inch, like a fairway, a golf course fairway level mow. Since I started using a reel mower last year, I'm hoping to switch over to a lower cut lawn, but I am going to keep some of the areas taller using a rotary. I have an Ego electric rotary mower. I also have a Toro Greensmaster. It's a Flex 21, similar to the Greensmaster 1000. So I'll be getting some good shots, good footage of mowing. I also use a Fisker's reel mower when I need to just mow a small area, or I don't want to compact the soil or ruin new grass seed, so I can trim the existing grass seed with the Fiskers because it's not as heavy as the Toro, but it still gets that clean cut of a reel mower. So I basically have three mowers: the Fiskers manual reel, I have the Toro Greensmaster, and then the Ego rotary mower. Yeah, so let's take a look around the yard. First, since we're at the putting green, let's take a look at the putting green. Let's pan across this putting green real quick. So we have the patio, then playground, and in between the playground, the patio, and the garden is going to be a putting green. Now you can see where all the cores from the core aeration, where those are, that's a low spot. That's where I have drainage. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm mixing some dirt. While I'm screening dirt, getting all the big chunks of rock, and also there's a lot of clay in there, and the big chunks of clay will ball up and they won't go through the screen unless I really mash them through there. But we're breaking the soil up, and then we're going to amend it with sand. So I'm mixing in sand until it's a good consistency, and then we're laying it down where we want the putting green to go. And this is going to provide a nice, firm, flat surface for the grass. That way when we plant the bent grass, after we roll it and really smooth it out, wet it down so that it can compact, and then roll it again probably, we're just going to work it, take our time getting a nice, firm, flat surface. Then we're going to plant the grass seed and hopefully get it to grow. So one thing I want to do is I'm going to send some of the soil out, the mix. I'm going to send some of the mix out to get a soil test, and that will tell us what nutrients it has, and it'll also let us know what we might want to amend it with to make sure that it's a fertile soil for the grass seed. So I have my doubts that it's going to be ideal as it sits. So what we want to do is see what it's deficient in and then amend it so that we can start treating the soil even before the grass seed goes down. Now a couple things I want to look into are mixing in some biochar, which is basically charcoal. Charcoal is a really good soil amendment that's going to allow it to store more nutrients and water. So when you throw down fertilizer and other nutrients, that biochar is actually going to grab onto some of that and store it for future use, but it'll actually help the soil in the long run. It may take a couple years if you don't preload the biochar. And what I mean by preload it is mix in like manure or urine or other nutrients, so if you don't preload it first, like preload it with nutrients and moisture, it'll be a couple years before you see any benefit, because that biochar is going to collect nutrients when it can get them, and eventually it'll release it to the plants. As you can see, this soil is pretty loose. If I grab a handful of it, I mean it's loose right now. So mixing stuff in at this point is going to be an ideal time to do it, because we're not going to be disturbing any plants because there's nothing growing in it right now. So if I can get it tested and know what I need to add, we'll start amending it before we even plant the grass seed. Let's go look at the front yard now. Now in the front, I scalped the grass. I wanted to do a top dressing, so I used sand to top dress it, except for the real low spots. The real low spots, I used the same sand and soil mixture, and I'll show some of that as well. And you can tell it's spring because the cherry blossoms are blooming. The front lawn, I scalped it a couple weeks ago, and then I top dressed it and then overseeded with that fairway mix. But I used sand to top dress it, and then the real low spots I used a sand and soil mixture, and I'll show you one of those spots right now. So right along the sidewalk here was a real low spot. The sidewalk kind of dropped off, and there was kind of a trench that when I mowed, it was kind of a pain because the front wheels would hit that edge, or if I mowed along the edge, the mower was kind of askew. So I wanted to fill in that big trench, that rut. So I filled it in with a sand and soil mixture, and then I raked in some seed, and I've been trying to keep it moist until it germinates. So I've been watering it 2 to 3 times a day, trying to keep it wet, trying to keep that seed wet so that it'll germinate and start growing new plants. So there's that spot. It's mostly along the edges where the deep ruts are. So here's another low spot. Right around the water shutoff was real low, so I filled that in. And then there was a trench along here. That was kind of a pain to mow. Basically, anywhere there's concrete, because this is still relatively new construction. We're the first owners of this house. And then up there by the corner, that was a real low spot, so I filled that one in. In the spots where you can see the light color, the sand showing through, those are the high spots of the yard. The spots that are darker green, those are the low spots where the grass is able to grow, because I did scalp it, so the real sandy spots are where it really got scalped. And the grass is starting to recover. It's still early spring, so the grass is still trying to green up for the year. This is the first day of the year that it's been in the 80s, I believe. It's been in the 40s and 50s the past couple of weeks. So we're just now, the grass is starting to wake up and starting to grow. Again, I'll keep an eye on this and make sure it greens up for the summer. I think I might start using the reel mower out front, see if I can get it fairway length. If the grass does well at that length, I'll keep mowing it short. Otherwise, I'll go back to a rotary and let it grow tall. Where you see the pavers, eventually I want to grade that so the ground level is up to the pavers. I purposely put the pavers in above ground level, but I want it to be at ground level. So I'm going to keep on top dressing, and I'll probably bring some soil and sand mixture out later in the year after I'm done with the putting green, and just kind of feather it in and make sure that, or try to get it up to the paver height. So I'll probably be doing some more top dressing in the future, as well as overseeding, just to keep on working on this lawn and getting it to look the best that I can. So last year is the first year I started mowing this with the reel mower. And it's due for a mow. So I may get the Fiskars out today and mow it, or I may wait until I get my Toro back, because I'm getting the blades sharpened on the Toro. But this is the soccer field. We're on a corner lot in our neighborhood, and instead of putting our house right next to the neighbor's house, they left a gap so that we have a pretty big side yard, which makes a good playing surface. It's fairly flat. Last year I top dressed it in just pulverized dirt. This year I put in a sand cap, so I top dressed it with sand. And from this angle it looks pretty green. Once you start walking, you can see that it's a little bit patchy. It's still recovering from the initial scalp and top dress. I did overseed this as well, so I've been watering it on a daily basis to try to keep that grass seed moist so that it can germinate. Probably get out here with the Fiskars, and I'll include a mowing montage with the manual reel at the end of this video. So if you want to jump ahead to do some sweet mowing action, I haven't used the Fiskars yet this year, so I'm going to need to make sure that it's sharp. I'll do the paper test, and if you don't know what that is, it's when you take a piece of paper and you put it up by the reel, by the bed knife, and you just spin it, and if it cuts the paper cleanly all the way across, then it's sharp enough and it's ready to mow. With the Fiskars, I've been sharpening it just by backlapping, and what you do is you put a sharpening compound on the reel and you spin it backwards, and as it rubs against the bed knife, it sharpens itself. It's essentially like making the reel into its own grinding wheel. So it kind of grinds away at itself and sharpens the edges. And then you rinse it off, you get it readjusted, and you do the paper test again to cut it. But that's essentially what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do the paper test. As long as it's cutting, I'm going to go ahead and do a mow job. Well, that about covers it for today. I'll be back next week with an update. I'm hoping to have the putting green completely covered by next week. I would love to have it, at least have all the material in place, and then I can start rolling it and filling in other lower spots. So we still have a lot of material to move. It's kind of a slow process, but I'm not really on a deadline. I pretty much have all summer, because if I want to plant grass seed at the optimal time, it's going to be probably later in the summer, before the fall hits, probably the tail end of the summer, so the seeds have time to germinate, and then once they start growing, ideally it'll have cooled off so they can really take off before winter and get some roots established. All right, that about covers it for this week. Stay tuned next week if you want to keep up to date on these videos on the putting green project. Like the video, also subscribe and turn on your notifications. That way you won't miss any of the episodes. I'm looking forward to seeing what gets done in the yard this year. I'm hoping to have a nice looking lawn to go with the nice patio that I put in last summer. And also we have a couple other projects coming up. There's an outdoor kitchen project that I want to do this summer, as well as someone gave me a Hammond A100 organ that I want to get up and running. I plugged it in, it doesn't make any sound right now, but I'm hopeful that with some tinkering I'll be able to get it to work. So that's a completely different type of video, doing an old-timey organ restoration, or at least some service. All right guys, that about wraps it up for this week. Go ahead and if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe and turn on your notifications so you can stay up to date on this putting green project. I look forward to seeing you next week.